I want to welcome you back to Black Site tonight. We're going to talk about George Foreman, former heavyweight champion, dies at 76, a great American hero. First, I would like for you to subscribe to this channel, hit that like button, hit that notification button, but also comment on this video. George Foreman, to many of us known, is one of the great heavyweight champions of all times. He came into prominence in 1968 when he won the Olympic gold medal. Then he went on to win the heavyweight championship by destroying Joe Frazier. But his biggest fight was with Muhammad Ali in Africa. You know about the documentary When We Were Kings, when it was about George Foreman and Muhammad Ali. He was a totally different man. He was a man who was mean. He was a man who didn't like people in general, but he lost that fight. And after that, he lost that fight, George went in kind of like a depression. In his career, fell backwards, but he stepped away from boxing, and he came back a decade later and became heavyweight champion by beating Michael Moore. It was incredible because he was in his 40s, a man that age, a man who rediscovered himself, a man who became a religious man, a man who became a likable man. The American people liked him. And something else happened to George Foreman. He became an incredible businessman with his George Foreman grill, which made him hundreds of millions of dollars and secured the financial security of his family. George Foreman is what we call a true American hero. A man who went through life, its ups and downs, and came out on top. And you got to understand, this happens to a lot of boxers. They get into the game, they lose their money, and some of them never bounce back. But George Foreman bounced back. He had a phenomenal career from where he started in Houston, Texas, to where he ended up. One of the great financial successes in boxing history. You have to understand that this man went through a lot, but he came out of it, especially when he lost to Muhammad Ali. That was something, it took him a while to get over it and to accept the loss, because he was always considered the biggest puncher possibly in boxing history, the most powerful puncher in boxing history. They said if George Foreman hit you, you felt it. You could ask Joe Frazier, Ken Norton, and many others who stood in the ring with this man in his prime. But to see the way he came back in life and the way he is a man, came back and made sure that his family was financially successful. You have to understand, this is why George Foreman is considered one of the greatest boxers, and not only that, greatest human beings of all time. We should celebrate George Foreman, especially if we're boxing fans, and we are, because he has given us so many thrills in this sport. The way he could just walk in the ring, scare his opponents. But the rumble in the jungle with Muhammad Ali was probably one of the greatest scenes in boxing history. Greatest documentaries in When We Were Kings in boxing history. It gave you the ebb and flows, everything that led up to the fight between George Foreman and Muhammad Ali. And it shows who George Foreman was at that period of time in his life. And to see him go from that time 10 years later, to see him being beloved by the public, to see him go from that to being the grill king, making hundreds of millions of dollars, then go from there to being a man of God, shows you that no matter how low you feel, you can always bounce back. And that's what George Foreman showed everybody. And this is why many of people who come on and who are going to be making videos are going to be happy and celebrating George Foreman, because this man lived his life. He made plenty of money. He had his ups and downs. He had everything that someone of his status could go through in life, and he came out on top. So this is George Foreman, the former heavyweight champion, two-time heavyweight champion. And many people, especially in the boxing world, is going to miss George Foreman, you know, because he was just a happy face, a guy. If he was around, seemed like if he was around him, he lifted everybody up. And that's the person that he became after losing to Muhammad Ali. That shows you right there that this man had to go through a metamorphosis to change who he was, to become the man that he was, leading up to the end of his life. You can change. If George Foreman can change, anybody can change. And he changed for the better. He made a lot of money. He lived a great lifestyle. He provided for his family. That's all you can say about George Foreman. He took a lot of criticism after the '68 Olympics, but he came back after that, and people actually loved him more after the loss to Muhammad Ali than before. So I would love to hear your comments in the comment section about George Foreman dying at 76, because this man gave a lot to the sport. He gave a lot to the business world. He just gave a lot to humanity. And we're gonna miss George.